Welcome back. This is Hollis Turnbow again, walking with you on your journey to Quilt as Desired. There are a lot of stencils out there, pictures in magazines and books and all sorts of things to help you select and use and create the quilting motif. Because as the book says, it's not a quilt until it's quilted. So now we need to get down to that. There may be a situation, though, in which you simply cannot find what will fit the space or what is appropriate to your space. The little quilt here, Amish Top Quilt, is a very good example of that. I made this as a second attempt after using this pattern in another quilt that I made. So it was created from a lot of stuff that I had left over. In making it, it really didn't make any difference what size these were as long as they were all consistent. But when I came down to actually finding a design that would fit into this triangle, nothing would fit, regardless of none of the 1,000 designs in the Stencil Company catalog would exactly fit there. So I got to the point that I said, well, I have to create my own. So what I did is I drew the design, the finished design of the triangle on a piece of paper. I simply folded it like so, put a few lines in it, and then using special tools and equipment and supplies, I was able to draw my own stencil. Now this becomes practical if you're going to repeat this many, many times over the course of the quilt, which I did in this instance. If you're going to do just one or two, then it might not be worth your time and expense to buy the equipment, but yet it's a good tool to have. The second example, which I want to show you by actually cutting a stencil, was in my Civil War theme fabric exchange that I did. Wanted something very simple. These came to me in fat quarters, so I looked at it and decided what size block I needed so I could get 8 by 10 pieces out of my fat quarters. So I'm thinking a little bit about the economy of the use of the fabric. So in order to decorate it or doctor it up a little bit, I decided to put these triangles in each corner. Now a very interesting thing happened. I had seen one similar to this, but I didn't go back and check the directions that was in the pattern before I started making this, and I didn't discover it until much later. So pay attention to the instructions in the picture. In the pattern, it had a triangle on the other side as well, which would then make this very symmetrical in the center. When I got around to quilting it was the first time I really discovered it. I like the design. It works fine. It's very appropriate, but it sure did give me a problem when it came to selecting a design. So I looked around to see what might happen. I knew this was irregular. I thought I could make something in there that would be appropriate. But I found this square stencil. It's 8 inches. My block is 8 by 10. So I said, this motif is very appropriate to that. How will I use it? Well, this is square, that's rectangle, and it just will not work. So the first thing I did is on paper, I drew my 8 by 10 finished. I then took the stencil, I drew the X in the center so I would have some alignment marks. I put one here, lined it up, and then I put this one here to line it up to redraw a square into a rectangle, and it worked. And it worked perfectly. And if you see that laying down and can imagine that quilted, it will fit perfectly in the space. Okay, I have 2 quilts that I was able to get into the fabric, and these are about 45 by 60, something like that. So since I have so many blocks, then it becomes very practical to make a stencil. And that's what I want to show you what to do now. It's not expensive. The only difficult thing, if I could even use that word, is when you get down to actually cutting, is learning to put equal pressure on both your blades. But the equipment you need is, of course, a design, as I have here. That's the first thing. The second thing is a regular rotary cutting mat. The third thing, this blue stencil material here called double blade knife, DBK. It's a flexible plastic, so you need something that's flexible. The hard plastic that we use for templates are just impossible to cut with the double blade knife, so you need a flexible plastic in order to do that. And then the last thing is you need a special cutting knife. This one is made by company Olfa, which makes our rotary cutters, but it has two blades here in it, and that's for cutting a channel. There was for years another one on the market, which is no longer available, made by X-Acto company, and these may still be around. It was a craft knife. It was used in lead cutting for leaded glass. You may be able to, scrounge some of that, but basically no longer available. These, however, are, and your package comes with a couple of different spacing elements in here. The way that you cut is you can either draw your design onto the blue plastic, the DBK plastic, or as I've done here, you can make a copy and put underneath and trace through and cut. In this case, I've chosen to do that for ease. But you could take a Sharpie pen and mark your design. And as I said earlier, the most important thing and most difficult thing for any of us to do is to keep equal pressure on both blades. I still find myself holding like a pencil in which you twist it a little bit to the right. So therefore the right cut is much deeper than the left cut, and I have to go back and recut. So what you do is I have the design here, and always cut on the same side of your line. And I recommend that that be the inside of the line, because then on your outside of your cut line is the full size of your stencil. Don't cut it all outside or in the center, because then your stencil will not end up the size that you want it to do. You also need on the drawing to put what we call bridges, because that's to hold the stencil together, as you see here. These bridges are here, otherwise it's all going to fall apart. So I would put some bridges in here that would enable me to have a drawing line and also to leave a space so it doesn't fall apart. The next thing you do is I would practice a little bit, perhaps on the side, or a good practice paper is just regular freezer paper, because it's a little bit thicker. So I've practiced now. I feel confident that I'm able to do it. So I'll put the blade down, make sure that I have equal pressure on both blades, and then I start cutting. And I'll cut down, and the recommendation is cut about 2 inches and then put your bridge in. And the problem is of not putting enough bridges in is the problem that I have here. Because the plastic tends to roll, it doesn't adhere well to the fabric. So I have too much flopping going on in here. I should have put a bridge in the center. So bridge sufficiently so that you'll be able to have a very stable stencil when you come around to do it. So I've done one, then I leave a little bridge, and I come down and I cut the next one, and I need to leave a bridge so that it doesn't cut into that. Now if I've been successful, I've cut both pieces, and if you see there, I indeed have. Then you take scissors and you clip that little section out, and there I have a stencil. Didn't take very long to do it. This other little design took probably less than 10 minutes to do, and this one take a little bit longer, but now I'll have a stencil that I can use that fits my space, and I'll be able to mark the design now on that. So don't give up if you don't find exactly the stencil or the design that you want, because you indeed can make your own. Hope you've enjoyed this segment. I certainly have, in thinking about what information that I could give you to stimulate your interest and your excitement about all range of stencils, the availability, the placement, answered some of your very concerned questions about how do I adjust the space. It'll be helpful and make it much easier and less stressful next time You get ready to do those final 3 words, and that's quilt as desired. Thanks for watching.